Hello everyone and welcome to May's Adult Craft Tutorial on Demand. This month we are going to be making string art, and here are the items that you're going to need to complete this craft. First, you're going to need a wood slab. This one is just super basic and I got this at Michael's, but you can find it at any craft store and possibly even Home Depot. You're going to want either a template of string art or maybe like draw a design of your own, but you'll want to mark on the outline different places where you're going to put nails, and we'll go through that when we get to that portion. You're going to need a hammer. You're going to need mini nails. So these are pretty tiny, but you're going to need about 100 of them, maybe more depending on what you're working on, but they don't need to be very big at all. We're going to need scissors and embroidery thread. So for this one, I'm going to work on like an ombre look. So I did purchase 3 different shades of yellow. I doubt I'm going to be using all of this thread, but it's just extra in case I need it. So let's get started on the craft with step 1. Step 1 of this craft, we are going to take our baseboard, which I've removed the plastic off of this one, and then we're going to take our template. So whatever sheet you use, I'm using an 8.5 by 11 sheet, and we're going to need to secure this to the board. You can do this however you want. I'm just going to use a little bit of tape on the edges, not too much. But you don't have to use tape if you feel like you can secure it on your own. But we just don't want the template to be moving. We have our template secured to our wood slab. We are going to start hammering these nails into where all of these dots are. If you are not using a pre-made template and you're drawing your own design, make sure that on the outline of whatever design you're using, you're putting periodic dots where your nails are going to be. Basically, that allows where you can wrap your yarn, or the thread, around all of the nails. And so you just know where the outline is going to be of your design. So I'm going to start hammering in these nails. You do not need to hammer them in deep. In fact, halfway is all you really need. Okay, so what I've found so far is that these nails are really tiny and it's very hard to kind of hold it with your hand. Oop, there it goes, and hammer it. So what I found, this board is really soft, so I just kind of lightly pushed it in a little bit just to kind of hold it in place. So you just use your fingers and kind of push the nail in a little bit, and then you can take your hammer and push it in, or hammer it in. You just want to hammer it enough that it's not going to fall out, but just about halfway. You don't want it sticking out too much, but you need enough space so that you can wrap the embroidery thread around. All right, so I'm going to keep going around here, and once I'm done with putting all the nails in, then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so here is a little progress report as I finished one of these letters. So I have some tips as you go along. If you are making some kind of a template with letters or anything like more intricate, I would highly suggest you start from the left all the way to the right. So not necessarily like how you would draw these letters, but literally left to right. It makes it so much easier to place them in when you're working that way. So for instance, do this outline and then do this and then do this and then the outside. It makes it so much easier so you can put it in place. Some of these nails were trickier than others to kind of push in momentarily so that I could hammer it in. So just take your time, go one at a time, and when you're hammering things in, do not worry too much about whether it's fully straight or not. All we want is that it's not going to fall out of the wood, and so it's, as long as it's secure and it's in the wood enough, but not too much. So be very gentle when you're hammering. The wood is very soft and the nails are very small, so you don't want to just hammer it in and then it's stuck in the wood and there's no space for the embroidery thread. So I'm going to keep going, and then once all my nails are in place, then I'll come back for the next step. Okay, now that I got all of the nails in here, I have a few tips and comments regarding this. The blog post that I actually took this craft from suggested to use 100 nails. I ordered 200 and I've used 200 here, and I ran out of nails. So I'm just gonna cut this tail off when I use embroidery thread. It'll still look like an X, but it just, I ran out, so there you go. Lesson learned there. So make sure that you can count these little dots to see how many nails that you'll need, or you can use a simpler pattern that uses less embroidery thread. So before I move on to the embroidery thread, I'm going to kind of just go through and make sure that all of my nails are secure, and if not, then hammer them in a little bit. I'm going to flip this over, shake. All right, nothing came out. That's good. You want everything to be secure. All right. The next step, we are going to be removing the template, and this is to be very careful here, not to rip out the nails. So remove my tape. Now that I have carefully ripped the paper off of all these nails, if in the process you do rip one of these nails out, which I did, there is a nice hole where it was, so you can just nail it back in, which is what I did. So now we're gonna use our embroidery thread. So I'm gonna start with the lightest color. Again, I bought ombre colors, so I have 3 different shades of yellow. I'm gonna start with my lightest, and then I'm gonna move on to my second darkest, and then on to the last. So, I'm gonna take wrappings out of this. And at the start of this embroidery thread, I'm actually gonna make a little slip knot, actually. 2 fingers like this and into the middle. Pull like this. And I'm gonna pick one of these nails, make a slip knot, attach it here, and pull tight. Like that. I'm going to keep wrapping it around this first nail here. Actually, around these 2. And then you just start wrapping around these nails. Be sure to leave open spaces where there are needed. So for instance, in this R, this middle space, this oval right here, there's not going to be any thread. So here we go. So I've gotten around halfway through my words here with the light color. So I did a little bit of the light yellow in this letter, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the second darkest color and work it way over here, and then just transition into the darker color for the whole of the A, and then part of the X in the darkest shade. So I'm just going to keep going, and when you change colors, if you're changing colors at all, make sure that you are crossing the yarns, or the thread, excuse me, before you cut the other one off. At the beginning of this with the slip knot, I did have to chop off the tail, otherwise it was getting really twisted. So I'm gonna make a slip knot to add this color on as well, and I'll cut off the tail before I get too far in, so as not to tangle too much. So here we go. I'm gonna continue and we'll come back once it's done. So this is my completed project. As you can maybe see, I used the lighter yellow here, kind of mixed it in with the darker yellow, and went along and then brought in the deepest color of yellow And my original drawing had the X going along here, but I didn't have enough nails. And you just keep wrapping along until you feel like you are done. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Just again, if there's supposed to be spots, empty spaces like in the R, the E, that's kind of small, but and then the A, as long as you don't have yarn going across those, you're doing just fine. So this is my completed string art for the month of May. Thanks for tuning in.